be using when analyzing change in supply and demand for United States dollars and determining the exchange rate. So first we're going to decide, is that change that's happening in the economy, is it going to affect US residents who hold US dollars and represent the supply, or is it going to affect foreigners that want or don't want US dollars, and as a result we're changing the demand? So if when we decide that, let's say we decided that the change is going to affect United States residents, we're going to ask ourselves, in this situation, do we want to keep our dollars to ourselves, or do we actually want to exchange them for the other currency? I use the word get rid of them. So in that case, we're changing the supply. So if we want to get rid of the dollars, then we say supply of dollars increases. We're getting rid of the dollars by bringing them to the foreign exchange market, and we're increasing availability of US dollars. We're increasing supply, moving the supply curve to the right. If we need our dollars to stay with us, I am better off spending them in United States than purchasing foreign goods and services, than traveling, than purchasing financial assets somewhere else. If I want my dollars to stay with me, then we say supply decreases. We have no interest in dealing with the foreign countries for whatever reason may be described in the situation. If we determine that the change in the economic situation is going to affect foreigners, we are also going to ask ourselves, do they want to get more dollars or not? If they want to get more dollars, for whatever reason, then demand is going to increase. But if they want to keep their currency, then demand is going to drop. Keep in mind that there could be a simultaneous change in demand and supply. Like we saw in the case of inflation, it's going to affect both supply and demand. So we need to pay attention to situations like that. So let's look at the examples. Let's say that German cars become more popular. How is it going to affect our demand and supply of US dollars? And how is it going to affect the equilibrium? So our demand is represented by the foreigners who want to get for US dollars. Supply is represented by us, US residents, who have ability to sell more dollars. This price, remember, represents our exchange rate. So we're going to see how increase in popularity of German cars is going to change exchange rates. So as you know, German cars are produced in Germany. Germany is a part of European Union. Germany uses euros. So what's going to happen? Since German cars are more popular, now more US residents want to buy German cars. We need euros to buy those cars. How do we get euros? We need to give away our dollars in exchange for euros. So we are willing to sell dollars in exchange for euros. So what's going to happen? Supply of dollars increases. When supply increases, we show it as a movement to the right. So supply increased, as a result, exchange rate drops, meaning that dollar depreciates when German cars become more popular. So when we buy more of our German cars, US dollar depreciates. Let's look at another situation. Let's assume that there is a recession in Canada. What does recession mean? As we know, recession is a situation when unemployment is pretty high and inflation is pretty low. So here we're worried about high unemployment. People don't have a lot of disposable income. So what does it mean? People don't have money to spend. People in Canada do not have money to spend. So they're probably going to buy less of the domestic good, but what's important for us, they're going to buy less of the goods produced in United States. Before, they used to need dollars in order to come and visit us, right? Now they don't have income to come and visit us or buy our products. So they're lowering their demand for dollars. They simply don't have enough Canadian dollars to exchange for US dollars. So we show it as a decrease of the demand curve to the left. So movement of the demand curve to the left. So they can't buy as much of our stuff as before. Demand for dollars decreases. Once again, dollar depreciates. So when there's a recession in other countries, it's not good for our country either. So they're not going to purchase as many of our products, and we can see that recession leads to depreciation of our United States dollar. Let's say that there is inflation in China. What's going to happen there? Inflation means there's higher prices. I'm going to show you everything immediately. There's higher prices in China, meaning their products are becoming more expensive, relatively speaking, compared to prior situation. So their goods are more expensive. Our goods, relatively speaking, now becoming less expensive for them. So they would rather purchase goods from the United States. So they want more of our products, which means they need more dollars, which means that demand is going to increase. At the same time, for us, Chinese products are more expensive. We say we don't want as much as we did before. If we don't want as much of their product, we're going to keep our dollars to ourselves. So as a result, the supply of dollars is going to decrease. We're removing ourselves from that exchange market. We're postponing our trip to China because it's too expensive now. So demand increases, supply decreases. As a result, exchange rate increases, which means that dollar appreciates. Finally, let's see what will happen when we have higher interest rates in the United States. Let's say we have higher interest rates on our bonds or maybe some other financial assets. So we are paying more for people to save money in our country, which means that foreigners are more attracted to our financial markets, which means they need more dollars. When they need more dollars, demand for dollars increases, and dollar is going to appreciate. We move the demand curve to the right. As a result, exchange rate increased and dollar appreciates. Couple of last things. Pegged exchange rate, it's that second type of an exchange rate that we discussed not so long ago. Pegged exchange rate means it's fixed. It's not changing. So a country's government can say, well, we decided that $1 is going to be worth 0.8 euros. And that's it. It's never going to change. No matter what supply and demand is, we're always going to keep it that way. How are we going to do that? Well, let's talk about benefits and drawbacks, and we're going to discuss how a country can actually fix that exchange rate. How they're going to deal with supply and demand. There are some benefits to the pegged exchange rate. It's stable. Investors know what to expect. Import-export transactions have less risk. If you always knew what the exchange rate is going to be, you can plan far ahead. You know that half a year from now, it's still going to be the same exchange rate. So you can make a lot of orders today, even though they're going to be far away in the future. And you're not going to worry about losing money if exchange rate is going to change. But of course, there are drawbacks to this pegged exchange rate. It requires a lot of actions from the central bank. How is that going to work? Well, there's still supply and demand for the currency. So now we have to deal with excess supply and excess demand. Because if we don't change the price accordingly, well, we're going to have a problem. So what are we going to do? Let's say there is a greater demand for US dollar. Demand increases, so as a result, technically, our exchange rate should be going up. The dollar should be appreciating. Well, we don't want that to happen, and I'll tell in a second why we may not want that to happen. We may not want that to happen, so we need, as a central bank, to make sure that the dollar depreciates back. How do we do that? Well, we can do that by controlling the supply. So we can purchase or sell our financial assets in order to compensate for that increase in the demand. So we can force or we can convince foreigners to sell us back our bonds, and in a way we're going to bring down the exchange rate. So it requires a lot of actions from the central bank. So here's the situation described. As demand for our own currency increases, central bank will need to increase supply to compensate for that increased demand. Well, how do we increase the supply? We need to have a certain amount of currency reserved at all the time. So we're not going to be able to use it more freely and move it towards some other things. So we have to make sure that we have enough currency to be able to compensate for lack or for increased demand for our currency. And that's the situation that was happening in China not so long ago. 3 to 4 years ago, the exchange rate the Chinese decided to fix. We used to have a fixed exchange rate with Chinese currency. It wasn't our proposition, but Chinese did it. So why did they want to keep the exchange rate stable? Why did they not want the Chinese currency to appreciate? We were demanding a lot of Chinese products, and we still do. So when we demand a lot of Chinese products, exchange rate increases for Chinese currency. It appreciates. So why did Chinese government wanted to keep it the same? As we know, when the currency appreciates, relatively speaking, it's more expensive to purchase the goods and services from that country. So when Chinese yuan was appreciated, it was becoming more expensive for us to buy Chinese products. Of course, Chinese government did not like it. They depend a lot on us purchasing their product. All the economy depends on how much we buy from them. So that's the reason why they wanted to artificially hold that exchange rate fixed. So what do they need to do? They needed to compensate it by increasing supply. So they needed to put more of the Chinese currency, demand US dollars. So they would sell a lot of Chinese currency, buy a lot of dollars. What would they do with those dollars? They were purchasing our financial assets. That's why a lot of times you hear that a lot of our debt is owned by China. And that was partially the reason for it. So they were trying to keep the exchange rate stable. So they would purchase a lot of our financial assets by increasing money supply of Chinese currency. So as a result, they were keeping the stable exchange rate and they were accumulating a lot of United States debt. United States then had negotiation with Chinese government to remove that pegged exchange rate, and now it's actually flexible. And if you look at the history of exchange rate, you will see that Chinese currency appreciated quite a bit after that pegged requirement was removed. Final thing we're going to discuss in this chapter is purchasing power parity. A lot of times you'll see it named as PPP. So you probably read about this already in the book, but what does purchasing power parity means? If PPP holds, if purchasing power parity holds, then a dollar in United States should buy as much product as $1 exchanged for euros will buy in Paris. So it shouldn't matter if we have a dollar or a dollar exchange for the other currencies. If purchasing power parity was holding, then we would be able to purchase the products in different countries and get exactly as much stuff. Let me give you an example. For example, if purchasing power parity holds, then let's say $10 in United States will buy one DVD. Well, how much can I exchange $10 in terms of euros? I can probably get 7 euros for it. If purchasing power parity holds, then 7 euros should be buying exactly one DVD in Paris. But purchasing power parity is not always going to hold. There are several reasons for it. Many goods cannot easily be traded. For example, haircuts, going to the movies, We can't really send haircuts from one country to another. Foreign domestic goods are also not perfect substitutes. That's another reason why purchasing power parity is not going to hold. Some consumers prefer Toyotas over Chevys, so they're not perfect substitutes in one country for another country. People in US may have less demand for French wine than people in France. So they might have different values, and that's another reason why it may not actually hold. It holds because if it didn't, it holds for certain goods, because if it didn't, then we will be able to use arbitrage, buy some products here, sell them for more expensive elsewhere. Of course, the laws of supply and demand will regulate it, so technically for certain goods, purchasing power parity is going to hold. So what does it mean if it doesn't? What can we say about that? Well, if purchasing power parity doesn't hold, it means the exchange rate is not really representing the true value of a currency. So economists were trying to figure out whether or not we can calculate if the currency is valued correctly, if the currency is overvalued or undervalued. As we just mentioned in the example with Chinese currency, for a long time it was very much undervalued. Once we removed the pegged requirement, then it appreciated by much more. So we needed to find a certain product that will be exactly the same throughout many countries. So not like we have a different value for it, not like it has different characteristics, not like we won't be able to move it across the countries. So we had to find a certain kind of universal product that will be sold in most of the countries in the world, and see whether or not we can purchase the equal quantities of that product using exchange rate compared to the other countries. That product is Big Mac. So some economists decided to use Big Mac as this universal product that will tell us whether or not the currency is overvalued or undervalued. So based on this Big Mac, they created the Big Mac index by calculating how much in United States dollars it will cost to purchase Big Mac in the other countries. So if $1 buys more products and pairs than it would be in United States, it means that a dollar is overvalued, so that it actually should be depreciated. So let's look at this Big Mac index and let's see what we see. So if you look at the Big Mac index, and here we have a data from 2012, we can see different currency in relationship to United States dollars. Okay, it's gonna prompt me to some advertisement. Okay, we don't want to buy a subscription yet, even though you should probably consider it. All right, so let's look at Big Mac index. So we have a price of Big Macs in different countries. This picture is screwed up. In different countries, measured in United States dollars. So what do we see? In order to purchase a Big Mac in Venezuela, you need $7.92. So if you had $7.92 and go to the exchange market and trade it for Venezuelan currency, you will be able to buy one Big Mac. So $1 buys less of a Big Mac in Venezuela than it does in United States, which means that Venezuelan currency is overvalued. So everything above the zero line is overvalued currency. Everything below the zero line is undervalued currency. So we see that compared to United States dollars, Chinese currency is undervalued. Hong Kong, Russian currency is all undervalued. So this is what Big Mac's index is going to tell us.